Men over 60, natural testosterone foods to keep you energetic day and night. Gentlemen, let's be honest. Somewhere along the way, most of us have been told the same tired story. You're over 60? Well, low energy, shrinking muscle, and a fading spark are just part of getting older. I'm here to tell you that's not just wrong, it's dangerous thinking. What if I told you that some of the most powerful ways to support testosterone, the very hormone that fuels your strength, drive, and vitality, are not found in a pill bottle or an expensive clinic, but right on your dinner plate? What if a few simple changes to what you eat and how you live could help you feel sharper in the morning, stronger in the gym, and more alive at night? Now, some men hear testosterone and think it's all about gym bodies or bedroom bragging rights. But as a physician who's worked with men for decades, I can tell you, it's about much more. It's your heart health, your mental clarity, your stamina, and even how well you recover from stress. And the best part? You can take action starting today. In this video, we're diving deep into 5 key areas: understanding how testosterone changes after 60, the science of food and hormones, the top natural testosterone-boosting foods, how to build them into a daily eating strategy, and the lifestyle habits that make those results stick. Before we jump in, do me a quick favor. Tap the like button, share this video with a friend who could use a boost, and hit that subscribe button. That's how we keep bringing you powerful, practical health tips that actually work. Because over the next few minutes, you're going to learn things about your body and your potential that no one's ever told you. And by the time we're done, you may never look at your breakfast, your grocery list, or your evening routine the same way again. Now, let's get started. Understanding testosterone after 60. Testosterone is often reduced to one headline, the male sex hormone, but that oversimplifies its role in your health. In reality, it's the silent engine that powers nearly every system in your body. It drives energy metabolism, helps you retain muscle, keeps your bones strong, supports heart function, and sharpens mental clarity. Yes, it maintains a healthy libido, but it's also the reason you have the stamina to carry groceries without strain, play with your grandkids, and wake up ready to face the day. Around age 40, testosterone begins to decline by about 1–2% each year. By the time you're 60, you may be working with 30–40% less than your younger peak. This isn't just a lab number. It's why muscles feel softer, waistlines grow, patience wears thin, and motivation fades. Low testosterone, or low T, has been linked to fatigue, depression, slower recovery from exercise, weaker immunity, loss of muscle mass, and even a higher risk of heart disease. Research from the American Heart Association shows men with low testosterone are more likely to develop heart disease and metabolic syndrome. And a study in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that men with the lowest testosterone levels faced a 40% higher risk of death over the next decade compared to those with mid-range levels. Despite these facts, one of the biggest myths I hear is once testosterone drops, there's nothing you can do without medication. That's simply not true. While medical therapy has its place, the foundation is still lifestyle and nutrition. Your body needs raw materials to make hormones, and with the right foods and habits, even at 60, 70, or beyond, it can respond. I've seen men in their late 70s boost their energy, regain strength, and improve mood without a single injection, just by giving their bodies what they truly need. The question is, will you start making those changes now or wait until the decline is so steep that it's harder to reverse? The choice is more in your hands than you think. The science of food and hormones. Your body produces testosterone mainly in the testes, in specialized cells called Leydig cells, which act like tiny factories. Just like any factory, they can only function if they have the right raw materials. 4 nutrients are essential: zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, and healthy fats. Zinc is critical for testosterone production, and even mild deficiencies can cause levels to drop, while restoring zinc can bring them back up. Magnesium supports hormonal balance and muscle function, with studies showing men who have higher magnesium levels tend to have more free testosterone. Vitamin D acts more like a hormone than a vitamin, directly regulating testosterone synthesis. Research has shown that supplementing vitamin D in deficient men can significantly boost their levels. Healthy fats are equally important because cholesterol is the backbone of testosterone molecules. Cutting out all fats may lower cholesterol numbers, but can also starve hormone production. On the flip side, certain foods can actively harm testosterone. Diets high in refined sugar spike insulin, which over time can reduce testosterone production. Trans fats from processed snacks and fried foods trigger inflammation that damages Leydig cells, and excessive alcohol can disrupt the hormonal signals between your brain and testes. The question is, are you giving your hormone factory the high-quality fuel it needs, or are you clogging the gears? The answer is in your daily choices. Build your plate with foods that support testosterone, and you give your body the tools to keep you strong, energetic, and healthy well into your later years. Top natural testosterone-boosting foods for men over 60. Number 1. Lean protein sources. Lean, high-quality protein is the foundation for building and maintaining muscle, and muscle mass itself works like a natural testosterone booster. The more muscle you maintain, the more efficiently your body signals for testosterone production. But it's not just about getting protein. It's about getting it from the right sources that deliver the nutrients your body needs to make hormones. Grass-fed beef, for example, is one of the richest natural sources of zinc, an essential mineral for testosterone synthesis. Zinc deficiency is more common in older men than most realize, often due to reduced appetite or less varied diets. In a 2016 Journal of Nutrition study, men with low zinc saw a significant testosterone drop, but when their zinc intake was restored, their levels rebounded within 6 months. Wild-caught salmon is another powerhouse. It's loaded with omega-3 fatty acids, which help reduce inflammation, support heart health, and provide healthy cholesterol, the raw material from which testosterone is built. A 2018 Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism study found that men with higher omega-3 intake had better free testosterone levels and healthier metabolic profiles. Free-range eggs also deserve a place on your plate. For decades, cholesterol was wrongly demonized, leading many older men to avoid eggs. But dietary cholesterol from natural sources is vital for hormone production. The yolk is especially valuable, containing vitamin D, healthy fats, and a touch of zinc. I think of a patient, Tom, 67, who had avoided eggs for years because he thought they were bad for his heart. His testosterone was low, and he felt sluggish. We brought back 2 to 3 free-range eggs a few mornings a week, added salmon twice weekly, and included grass-fed beef in moderation. 3 months later, his energy was noticeably better, and his cholesterol numbers improved, not worsened, because the rest of his diet supported heart health. Another patient, Alan, 72, struggled with slow muscle loss despite regular walking. By adding a palm-sized portion of lean protein to each meal, alternating between beef, salmon, chicken, and legumes, he not only gained back muscle but also reported better mood and focus. The question I often pose to my patients is this: if your muscles are one of the best allies you have for keeping testosterone strong, why not give them the fuel they need to grow and stay resilient? Number 2. Cruciferous vegetables. I understand that vegetables may not sound thrilling, especially if you grew up in a meat and potatoes household, but cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and kale deserve a permanent place on your plate. These vegetables contain a powerful compound called indole 3-carbinol, which your body converts into diindolylmethane, or DIM. DIM helps metabolize excess estrogen into weaker, less active forms. And yes, men produce estrogen too. In fact, as testosterone levels naturally decline with age, the relative amount of estrogen can creep up, blunting the benefits of the testosterone you still have. Keeping that balance in check is critical for preserving muscle strength, steady energy, and a healthy waistline. Research backs this up. A Harvard public health analysis found that men who consumed higher amounts of cruciferous vegetables had a healthier testosterone-to-estrogen ratio than those who rarely ate them. Another study from the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry showed that compounds in broccoli and Brussels sprouts improved estrogen metabolism within just weeks of regular consumption. In practical terms, that means the testosterone you do produce can work more effectively, giving you better muscle tone, sharper mental focus, and improved vitality. I think of my patient Frank, 64, a lifelong steak and potatoes man. We started with a simple change, 1 serving of steamed broccoli or roasted Brussels sprouts added to his lunch every day. 90 days later, Frank had lost 2 inches from his waist, his afternoon energy dips disappeared, and his mood stabilized. He didn't just feel younger. His friends told him he looked younger. Another patient, Gary, 70, initially turned up his nose at Brussels sprouts but agreed to try roasted cauliflower seasoned with olive oil and garlic. 6 months later, not only had he trimmed down, but his blood pressure improved, and his testosterone-to-estrogen ratio was the best it had been in years. So let me ask you, if a few extra forkfuls of vegetables each day could help you keep your strength, protect your hormone balance, and improve your overall health, is that really too much to put on your plate? Sometimes the smallest additions make the biggest difference. Number 3. Nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are one of the simplest, most portable ways to support healthy testosterone levels without feeling like you're on a diet. Brazil nuts, in particular, are nutritional powerhouses. Just 2 to 3 a day can give you your entire daily requirement of selenium, a mineral that plays a critical role in testosterone production and sperm health. Selenium also acts as a potent antioxidant, protecting the Leydig cells in your testes from oxidative damage. A study in the Journal of Urology found that men with higher selenium intake not only had better testosterone levels but also improved fertility markers. Pumpkin seeds are another underrated gem. They are rich in zinc, which is essential for testosterone synthesis, and magnesium, which supports hormonal balance and muscle function. In 2014, biological trace element research reported that men with higher magnesium levels had significantly more free testosterone, the form your body can actually use, compared to those with lower levels. Magnesium also helps regulate sleep and muscle recovery, both of which directly influence testosterone. The beauty of nuts and seeds is how easy they are to incorporate. A small handful of almonds, walnuts, or sunflower seeds in the afternoon can stabilize blood sugar, preventing those late-day crashes that drain your motivation. I recall a patient, Mark, 69, who replaced his daily bag of potato chips with a mix of Brazil nuts, pumpkin seeds, and almonds. Within 3 months, his afternoon fatigue was gone, his lab work showed a measurable bump in free testosterone, and he'd lost nearly 5 pounds without changing anything else. If something as small as a daily handful of nuts and seeds can feed your hormone health, steady your energy, and satisfy your appetite, why not make it a habit? Sometimes the simplest snacks can deliver the biggest benefits. Number 4, healthy fats. Healthy fats are not your enemy. In fact, they are essential partners in hormone health. Testosterone is synthesized from cholesterol, so when you drastically cut fat from your diet, you're effectively shutting down part of your hormone supply chain. The key is choosing the right kinds of fats. Avocados and extra virgin olive oil are excellent examples, both rich in monounsaturated fats that not only provide the raw material for testosterone production, but also protect cardiovascular health, which becomes even more important for men over 60. Numerous studies highlight this connection. Research published in the Journal of Steroid Biochemistry and Molecular Biology found that men who consumed higher amounts of monounsaturated and saturated fats had significantly higher testosterone levels than those on low-fat diets. Another large-scale review in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition reported that diets incorporating olive oil improved lipid profiles, reduced inflammation, and supported better hormone balance. This aligns with what we see in Mediterranean countries, where olive oil is a daily staple. Men there often maintain stronger testosterone levels and enjoy lower rates of heart disease well into older age. Healthy fats go beyond just avocados and olive oil. Nuts, seeds, fatty fish, and even moderate amounts of grass-fed dairy can all contribute to a healthier hormone profile. I think of my patient Robert, 71, who had spent years avoiding fats in an effort to protect his heart. The result? He was constantly tired, his joints ached, and his testosterone was barely above the clinical low. We reintroduced healthy fats, half an avocado with breakfast olive oil on his salads, salmon twice a week. And within 4 months his energy came back, his joints felt better, and his blood tests showed improvements in both testosterone and HDL cholesterol. So here's the question I'd pose to you. If the very nutrient your body needs to make testosterone also helps protect your heart, why starve yourself of it? Choosing the right fats isn't just a dietary choice, it's an investment in strength, vitality, and longevity. Number 5, herbs and spices. Some of the most effective natural testosterone boosters aren't exotic superfoods. They're right in your spice rack. Ginger, for instance, has been used for centuries in traditional medicine, but modern science is now catching up. A 2012 study in the International Journal of Reproductive Biomedicine found that daily ginger supplementation increased testosterone levels in middle-aged men by up to 17%, while also improving sperm quality. Ginger's benefits likely come from its potent antioxidants and its ability to improve blood circulation, both of which support Leydig cell function. Turmeric is another standout. Its active compound, curcumin, is a strong anti-inflammatory agent. Chronic inflammation can interfere with testosterone production by disrupting the signaling between your brain and testes. Curcumin not only helps lower inflammation, but also supports healthy blood flow, ensuring hormones are efficiently transported where they're needed. A review in Nutrients, 2020, suggested that curcumin supplementation could indirectly support testosterone by reducing oxidative stress and inflammation markers. Fenugreek, a humble herb often used in cooking, has some of the strongest human data for testosterone support. In a randomized controlled trial published in the International Journal of Sport Nutrition and Exercise Metabolism, men who took fenugreek extract for 12 weeks experienced measurable increases in testosterone and notable gains in strength. Researchers believe fenugreek works by inhibiting enzymes that break down testosterone, allowing more of the hormone to remain active in the body. These spices aren't just health supplements. They're easy to add to everyday meals. I've had patients who started by simply adding grated ginger to their morning tea, sprinkling turmeric into soups, or cooking chicken with fenugreek seeds. One of them, Dennis, 66, told me that within 2 months of making these changes, alongside a balanced diet, his morning energy was stronger and his workouts felt more productive. So here's something worth asking yourself. If a pinch of the right spice in your daily cooking could help you maintain strength, energy, and hormonal balance, why wouldn't you make it part of your routine? Sometimes the smallest flavor upgrades can make the biggest difference to your health. Number 6. Dark berries and pomegranates. Antioxidants are your body's rust prevention system, shielding your Leydig cells from oxidative stress and preserving their ability to produce testosterone efficiently. Dark berries like blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries are loaded with anthocyanins, while pomegranates are rich in polyphenols, both groups of compounds known for their powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. By protecting these hormone-producing cells, you're ensuring the factory floor for testosterone stays in top working condition. The research is compelling. A study published in Clinical Nutrition found that consuming pomegranate juice daily for just 2 weeks increased salivary testosterone by 24% in healthy adults, along with improvements in mood and blood pressure. Another paper in the Journal of Medicinal Food highlighted how blueberry supplementation reduced markers of oxidative stress and improved vascular function, critical for maintaining optimal blood flow, which not only benefits the heart, but also supports performance in more personal areas of life. These fruits don't just work quietly in the background. They offer visible benefits. Improved blood flow means better oxygen delivery to muscles, faster recovery after exercise, and more consistent energy throughout the day. I recall a patient, Harold, 70, who started adding a handful of blueberries to his morning oatmeal and a small glass of pomegranate juice in the afternoon. Within a month, he reported fewer afternoon slumps, better workout stamina, and, as he put it, a welcome boost in the romance department. Adding these foods to your routine is simple. Toss berries into yogurt, blend them into smoothies, or sprinkle them over salads. Enjoy pomegranate seeds as a snack, or add the juice to sparkling water for a refreshing drink. And here's something to think about. If a daily dose of these fruits can protect your testosterone, improve your circulation, and enhance your overall vitality, isn't that a sweeter habit to pick up than most supplements on the shelf? Number 7. Whole grains and legumes. Whole grains and legumes may not seem as exciting as a sizzling steak or a colorful berry mix, but they play a crucial role in sustaining energy and supporting hormonal health. Foods like steel-cut oats, quinoa, barley, lentils, and chickpeas provide slow-release carbohydrates that keep your blood sugar steady throughout the day. This matters because frequent blood sugar spikes lead to elevated insulin, and over time, high insulin levels can suppress testosterone production by disrupting hormonal signaling. These foods are also rich in B vitamins, particularly B6, B12, and folate, which are essential for energy metabolism and the proper functioning of your endocrine system. A study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that men with higher intakes of whole grains had better insulin sensitivity, lower inflammation markers, and healthier testosterone profiles compared to those on refined carb-heavy diets. Legumes add another layer of benefit. They're high in plant-based protein and minerals like magnesium and zinc, both of which contribute to optimal testosterone production. I've seen this work in real life. One of my patients, Edward, 68, used to rely on white bread and sugary snacks for quick energy, but the highs and crashes left him drained. We swapped those out for oatmeal at breakfast, a lentil soup at lunch, and quinoa alongside dinner. Within weeks, his energy leveled out, he stopped craving sweets in the afternoon, and his follow-up labs showed more stable blood sugar and a slight but noticeable rise in free testosterone. It's an easy adjustment. Add cooked lentils to salads, use quinoa instead of white rice, or make a hearty bean chili. And here's something to consider. If your choice of carbohydrates can either drain your energy and weaken hormone production or fuel you steadily while protecting testosterone, which one belongs on your plate? Sometimes the quiet, consistent foods are the ones that do the heavy lifting for your health. Daily eating strategy. Once you know which foods support testosterone, the next step is putting them into a plan you can actually enjoy and sustain. Sudden overhauls rarely last. Small, consistent changes are what create lasting results. A practical example for a 65-year-old active man might start with breakfast. 2 free-range eggs scrambled in extra virgin olive oil with a side of sautéed spinach and mushrooms for vitamin D, magnesium, and antioxidants, plus a small bowl of steel-cut oatmeal topped with blueberries and pumpkin seeds for steady energy and a boost of zinc. Mid-morning, 2 Brazil nuts and a handful of almonds supply selenium and vitamin E, paired with water or unsweetened green tea to support blood flow. Lunch could be grilled wild-caught salmon for omega-3s, roasted Brussels sprouts with garlic to help balance estrogen, and a quinoa salad with avocado, cherry tomatoes, and olive oil dressing for heart-healthy fats and lycopene. In the afternoon, a small cup of pomegranate seeds or fresh pineapple adds antioxidants and natural enzymes that aid circulation and digestion. Dinner might be a grass-fed beef stir-fry with broccoli, bell peppers, and turmeric for zinc, vitamin C, and anti-inflammatory benefits, served with brown rice or lentils for B vitamins, and a fresh side salad with olive oil and balsamic vinegar. Before bed, a warm cup of chamomile tea promotes relaxation, helping you get the deep sleep necessary for peak testosterone production. This isn't a restrictive diet. It's a balanced eating pattern that fuels your body, protects your hormones, and keeps meals satisfying. If you can eat flavorful, nutrient-rich foods that also strengthen your health, why settle for anything less? Lifestyle synergy. Nutrition may be the foundation, but daily habits determine how much you benefit from it. Sleep is the first pillar. Testosterone production peaks during deep sleep, and studies show that men sleeping less than 5 hours a night can have levels 10–15% lower than those getting 7 to 8 hours, a drop equivalent to aging a decade. Creating a regular bedtime, keeping the room dark and cool, and avoiding screens before bed all help promote restorative rest. Strength training is next. Resistance exercises like weightlifting, resistance bands, or bodyweight moves send a signal to the body to produce more testosterone. Just 20 to 30 minutes, 3 times a week, focusing on large muscle groups such as legs, back, and chest, can make a measurable difference. In the European Journal of Applied Physiology found that older men who adopted resistance training improved both free and total testosterone within 12 weeks. The third factor is stress management. Chronic stress raises cortisol, a hormone that directly competes with testosterone, pulling resources away from production. Mindfulness, deep breathing, yoga, or even a short daily walk can reduce cortisol and protect testosterone levels. In fact, a psychoneuroendocrinology study found that men who practiced mindfulness maintained higher testosterone over time. If a few small adjustments, better sleep, short strength sessions, and daily stress relief can boost your energy, mood, and hormone health, why not start now? So, gentlemen, let's bring it all together. We've seen how testosterone isn't just about one aspect of your life. It's the silent engine powering your energy, muscle strength, mental clarity, heart health, and yes, your confidence. We broke it down into 5 key areas. First, understanding what happens to testosterone after 60 so you know exactly what you're working with. Second, the science of how food and hormones interact, because without the right fuel, your body simply can't perform at its best. Third, the top natural testosterone-boosting foods that are both delicious and effective. Fourth, a daily eating strategy that fits into your life without feeling like a diet. And finally, the lifestyle habits, sleep, strength training, and stress control that take your results from good to life-changing. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this. Your age doesn't have to dictate your energy, your strength, or your vitality. Have far more control than you've been led to believe, and every choice you make, from what's on your plate to how you end your day, can move you closer to the man you want to be. Thank you for watching and for investing this time into your health. If you found value here, hit that like button. It tells us we're on the right track. Share this video with a friend who needs to hear it and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'm Dr. William, wishing you strength, vitality, and many more energetic days ahead. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.